Hey guys, this is test 41 game 3. This is the committee's board of directors game. We've got two different groups, finance and incentives, into which we are splitting the 7 variables GHL, MUWZ. So for this reason I call this game a splitting game. It's a particular type of grouping game. Now if you look at the rules, you'll see they're all conditional and we have the same variables featured in multiple rules. So for this reason we want to link together the variables into, hopefully, 2 long conditional chains that will represent all of the relationships discussed in the rules. So the first rule we have is if G is finance, H is incentives. So I write down G finance, then H incentives, and I immediately take the contrapositive of this. Now, if H is not incentives, where is it? Since there's only 2 committees, F and I, it must be in F. So the contrapositive of this will be HF requires GI. Now the next rule tells us L finance, then M and U incentives. We don't have those variables listed right now. So for that reason, I'll skip that rule and come back to it when we have more information in order to more easily, hopefully, link it to what we already have. The next rule discusses W and Z. We don't have either of those, so we'll skip this, come back to it. But the next rule is related. It talks about G and U. It says that G and U are always in different places. So if G is incentives, then U must be finance. And also the reverse, if U is finance, then G is incentive. So this is actually an arrow pointing in both directions. We can do the same to the top chain, of course. G finance will require U incentives, and U incentives will require G finance. Another arrow pointing in both directions. Now the next rule says Z finance, then H finance. We've already got H finance here, so I will simply stick Z finance in front of that. ZF requires HF, contrapositive. If H is not finance, it must be incentives, so HI requires ZI. Now we can go back to the rules that we skipped. We know that LF requires MI and UI. We've got UI right here, so we can simply stick LF in front of that. LF requires UI, and it also requires MI. Now the contrapositive, if we have UF, then we must have had LI, and if we have MF, then we must have LI. So MF requires LI. Then we also have that W and Z are in different committees, so therefore ZI must require WF, and WF must require ZI. Also, of course, the contrapositive of that, we know that WI is requiring ZF and vice versa. So these are our two long conditional chains. They represent all of the relationships discussed in the game. So this is our initial setup for the game. Now question number 13 is a typical orientation question, but it's only regarding the finance committee, not the incentives committee. So for that reason, we're simply going to want to take our chains. I would actually look at the chain that has more F's on it, and I see the bottom chain has ZF, HF, UF, MF. So we know that whenever we have ZF, we must have H and U be F as well, because that just follows the chain going forward. Of course, MF is not determined. We cannot assume that M would be at F. But any choice in which we see Z, we must also see H and U, or else this is a bad choice. So B and C both mention Z, yet do not mention H and U both. So for that reason, we can automatically eliminate choices B and C for question number 13. Now, we can also look at D, but that has both H and U at F, so we're okay on that issue. Next, I would look to see, we know that Z and W conflict, for example. We can't have them both listed in the same place. However, we see in choice D, Z and W were both there. That's unacceptable, so D is gone. We're down to A and E. So now let's look at the top chain. Now, no choice mentions L at F, so we're not going to use that. But we do know that GF requires WF. So we can also look and see, we exhausted the usefulness of ZF. We can use HF, though. And we know that HF requires G to be at I, so they cannot both be on F. Yet choice A lists both G and H at F. Unacceptable, so A is gone. and E is our answer to number 13. Next, number 14, which pairing of board members cannot both serve on I? So this would be a pairing of variables that have a relationship that goes from I, subscript I, to subscript F, because that's whenever one of them is at I, the other must be at F, therefore they could not both be at I. So if we run through the choices, A, G, and H, those do not have that relationship. They have an F arrow I relationship, not I arrow F. They cannot both be at finance, but they could both be at incentives potentially, so A is gone. G and W, well, G and W have an F arrow F relationship, or they have an I arrow I relationship, not I arrow F, so that's gone. But C, H, and W, when one's at I, the other's at F. When one is at I, the other's at F. So for that reason, they are meeting this requirement. They cannot both be at I for that reason, and C is our answer to number 14. I will look at the rest though. M and U, they're not even related. They just both lead to L on the bottom chain, and they both are required by L from the top chain, so that's out. And then E, M, and W, let's look at them. They're not even related. They both stem, we have M over here and W over here. They both stem from L, but they're not related to each other directly, so E is gone, leaving C as our answer for number 14. Next, number 15, the max number of people on F. So I would make a little T diagram here, an F-I split diagram, and I would try to map a few relationships extracted from the chains and from the rules. So we know that U and G can never be together. That's the fourth initial rule of the game. We also, of course, have the double arrow between them. GI requires UF and vice versa, so they're never together. So one of them will always be on F, and one of them will always be on I. So I have U/G, G/U in each column. Now we also know that W and Z have a similar relationship. When one of them is at F, the other must be at I, and vice versa. So one of them is at F, one of them is at I. So we're always losing at least two things from finance to be at incentives, and vice versa, of course. So for that reason, we can say that we will never have all five, we will never have up to 5 people in finance. We'll never have more than 5 people in finance, because we're always losing 2 to incentives. So for that reason, we can eliminate 6, choice E, off the bat. However, variables not mentioned on this diagram so far. We have U and G and W and Z, but what aren't we mentioning here? Well, we're not mentioning L and H, for example, and L and H have an F arrow I relationship. When one is at F, the other's at I. So for that reason, we will always have at least one of those 2 variables in the I column. So we're losing, -1 from GU, we have -1 from ZW, and -1 from LH with regard to finance. So for that reason, we're always losing at least 3 variables, at least one from each of these pairings, from our total of 7 things. So 7 minus 3 leaves us with 4. And we're getting rid of 5 also. D's gone. 4 is our answer. Now you think to yourself, well, how do we know we could even have 4? Why not 3 as the maximum? Well, if you look on the bottom chain, you see that, ZF requires HF and UF, and then there's no reason we couldn't have MF as well. So Z, H, U, and M serve as a working example of having 4 things at finance. So we know it is possible to have 4 things at finance, and C is our answer to number 15. Next, number 16, if both M and W are on F. So again, I'm going to create an FI split diagram here. I'm putting M and W under finance. Now we know that WF, whereas WF is down there, requires ZI because this is a double arrow. So I'm putting Z under the I column. What else do we have? Well, MF requires LI, so I'm going to put L in the I column, and that's all that's really directly determined by this question stem, but we'll just run through the choices. Could G and L both be on F? No, of course, L is on I, so A is gone. Could G and U both be on I? No, because they're never together due to the 4th rule of the game, so B is gone. H and Z both on F? No, Z is specifically on I, so C is gone. D, L, and U both on I? No, well actually, yeah. Li works, and there's no reason we couldn't have U on I as well. It wouldn't lead to any problems here. Ui is all the way up here. If you look at what it impacts, it's not causing any problems. So D works, it's possible. And then looking at E, of course, ZF doesn't work, Z's at I, so E's gone, leaving D for number 16. If G is on I, what must be true? So I'll make another little Fi split diagram here. G on I requires U on F, and then UF requires L on I. This is all we know for certain here. Now they're asking us what must be true. It's going to be one of these three things most likely, of course. So what must be true? H on F. No, H was not determined. That's going backwards on this arrow. GI does not require HF. HF requires GI. So A is gone. L on I. Yes, we have that right here. So B is our answer to 17. I will look at the rest, though. M on F. Not determined. C is gone. W on I. No, that's going backwards once again. From GI, we can't say that for certain, so D is gone. And then E, Z, F. Again, that's going backwards. We don't know, leaving B if you didn't get it before.